Bangladesh's political dynasty came crashing down 1 year ago, the result of a student uprising. Millions had had enough. 1 year on, where does the country find itself? What has the interim government achieved? And is the country more stable than it was then? Well, before we get into our discussion, here's Nadine Yasser with a quick look back at how it all began.
An empire of power collapsed overnight. Exactly 1 year ago, Bangladesh saw one of the most dramatic shifts in its history. A student-led movement overthrew a government that had ruled for 15 years. And with that, the fall of an all-powerful political family that had been instrumental for 5 decades. How did it all start? With one simple demand: to reform the government quota system. Students were fed up with a job market that felt rigid, where more than half of all government positions were reserved for specific groups. It started as peaceful protests, but was soon met with brutal government force. Students were beaten, tear-gassed, and shot. The movement gained more and more momentum, and the demands expanded, calling for broader social and political changes. Then, on August 5th, history was made. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina stepped down and fled the country. Protesters roamed around her abandoned home, forever off limits, and for the first time in decades, the ruling party, the Awami League, was out. Soon after, Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus was brought in to lead an interim government. But change doesn't come easy. It's been a year now, and Bangladesh is still finding stable ground. Old political parties are resurfacing, new parties formed by student protest leaders are racing towards elections, and clashes with supporters of the ousted government still erupt. The country is at a crossroads, and many are struggling to predict what comes next.
I'm Stefanie Dekker, and this is The Street. Bangladesh has entered a new and still uncertain chapter. On today's episode, we're going to look into what is happening politically, and we ask young people what they feel has changed and what lies ahead. Well, to help us in this discussion, we are joined by Apurba Jahangir, Deputy Press Secretary to Chief Advisor of the Interim Government of Bangladesh. He is in Dhaka. And Ifti Nihal, a Bangladeshi content creator, joining us from West Palm Beach, Florida, in the United States. Welcome for joining us, gentlemen. Ifti, if I could start with you. 1 year on, how would you describe the feeling in the country, particularly among young people? What do they feel has been achieved over the last year?
Well, I can't speak for people inside the country as I'm currently a non-resident, right? But what I can speak for is the general feeling in the diaspora. And I can tell you that starting 1 year ago, there has been a burst of hope and a burst of optimism following the revolution that led to the toppling of the former government. But also there is this sense of cautious optimism now, right? Revolution itself is not enough if what follows isn't better. I'm not saying what exists today is not better than what existed a year ago. I don't think there's anyone that would make that case, but the way I see it is kind of like the analogy to a renovation of a broken down home, right? It's not enough to tear down the walls and strip the floors. And that's what the revolution was. It's about building anew. And I think it would be fair to say that we haven't exactly done that perfectly so far. But again, I would say young people and old people, like especially in the diaspora, are cautiously optimistic about what the future holds.
Apurba, there has been criticism of the interim government. It is, of course, always easy to criticize from the outside, saying that reforms have been slow, that there's still issues with corruption, elections delayed. Is that fair? What would you say has been achieved in the last year?
Well, thank you for having me. I think, criticism, you have to realize that for 15 years, people couldn't criticize the government. So this is something that people of Bangladesh are really enjoying. And there has to be criticism. The uprising, one of the things that it was all about was kind of holding the government accountable. So people are questioning that. And I think it's a good practice. And you have to realize the expectations are really high. And of course it should be. When the interim government came into place, all the people had this hope that things are going to change, and things are changing. The thing is that it's a slow process, but nevertheless it is a process, and it has to it kind of has to go through its own pace. So we're still optimistic that the reforms are gonna happen, and you've seen the unity in the country. All the political parties have come together to support this reform, to support this government, and we're slowly going towards an election. There's already have been two probable dates announced. I mean, April is one, and then there's if all the work is done, then it's gonna be in February. So before Ramadan, hopefully, if everything's done. So I think we're moving towards progress, and everybody's hopeful towards that.
Well, we will go to Bangladesh now because it was the youth who came out to the streets and braved a brutal police crackdown, ultimately achieving the unthinkable with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fleeing the country. How do they feel 1 year on? Well, here is one voice from student Kenny's Fatima Zabin in Brak University in Dhaka.
When I look back in last July, all I see is pure emotions. We were afraid, we were furious. We saw our friends and family die before us. We felt hopeless. At the same time, we knew that things can go on like this. Hasina fled. It was like a dream. We couldn't believe that we won. Countries facing a lot of lawlessness and lack of order. And we see lots of mob violence is going on. Violence against women has increased. Violence against minority has increased. Those female leaders who leaded the protest in July 2024, they are being marginalized. We see a group of people are trying to hijack the July movement, the July uprising, and they're using it for their own good. We see lack of management in many sectors. We are still a little hopeful about the well-being of this country, but at the same time, when we see these violences going on, these incidents we are seeing every day-to-day life, it makes us question the ability of this interim government to lead this country properly.
Now, Ifti, you have been fascinated with Bangladesh's history and politics, I understand, since you were a child. What are your main concerns now when you're looking at the political landscape? We have new parties popping up. How would you describe where the country is at now?
Yeah, I would say my primary concerns echo the video that was just played. We are seeing tons of violence, particularly against marginalized groups, those being religious minorities and women. And the root cause seems to be religious fundamentalism. And as someone who has, studied our history for a long time, I can tell you religious fundamentalism has never been good for our nation. And if there is one good thing, I guess, about the last 15 years prior to the July Revolution, it was that aspect of the country was kind of kept to a limited scope. Obviously, I don't blame the interim government for the rise in this. I think in the midst of chaos, it's the perfect environment for fundamentalism to grow. But I think it shouldn't be a political statement to say that whatever the new Bangladesh looks like, it should be a secular one, and one that doesn't allow for groups to, go after minorities for simply existing.
There is already criticism about minority rights, women's rights. Apurba, we heard Ifti there talk about the concern about religious fundamentalism and the rise. How would you describe how you're looking at this? I know the interim government is talking about, maintaining democracy and, in fact, allowing it to flourish after so long. How would you describe the political landscape?
Well, I think there's two ways to looking at this. One is if you look at around the world where something like this has happened, you'd see there had been but following that there would be much chaos, right? So I think we as a country have done a great job in kind of getting things back on track. So right now, I think Bangladesh if you look at Bangladesh's history, this has happened before, right? There have been uprisings and there have been change in government, change in scenario. But never in Bangladesh has Islamic fundamentalist could take that scope and flourish. That hasn't happened in Bangladesh because Bangladeshi people won't let that happen, and I think that's also something that is happening now. Bangladesh as a whole is a very center secular country, so there has to be. I don't think there is a chance of that. And regarding the minority issue, I mean, we as from my press wing, I think we have welcomed all the journalists to come here in Bangladesh and to see what's actually happening. I mean, we're not saying to believe us, but rather see it for yourself. So there's also that transparency from the government. So anybody can come, any journalist can come in, they can look around and see for themselves what's happening. So I don't see. I mean, you have to realize what the situation is, and from that, I think if you look at what had happened around the world, and if you look at Bangladesh, I think it's actually going towards a better future.
Ifti, are you worried at all about the elections? We're going to play a graphic in a bit where there are arising concerns about potential interference or misinformation in the potential campaigns. What are your views on that?
Yeah, I will always maintain that, I have no horse in this race. My only desire for the elections, whether they be in February, April, or later, is that they are fair and free. In the last 20 or so years, that hasn't always been the case. But I hope and pray that the interim government, if there's one thing that they are able to execute successfully, it's that it's fair and free elections. And to me personally, if that means that the interim government needs to be in charge for slightly longer, then that's absolutely fine. I'm not on board with this movement to kind of rush these elections as soon as possible, because what is reassuring is we heard it from the deputy press secretary themselves. Their stance on what I believe to be important, and that secularism is a strong one. I can't say the same for the other parties, and so I wouldn't rush to create an environment where they can come to power in elections that may not be completely fair and free. So I think the people should put their trust in the interim government to kind of decide when that will happen best and when the best chance of a fair and free election is.
Because there is a debate within Bangladesh, isn't there? Some of the political parties and others calling for elections to happen sooner rather than later. Let's have a look at this post on X by Dismiss Lab. That's an online verification and media platform in Bangladesh. And it says, experts raise concern over the ethical implications as dozens of AI-made election videos surface on several social media platforms promoting various political parties through fully synthetic characters. Now, there's, of course, a concern with AI in elections everywhere. But currently in Bangladesh, where the political climate is already tense and the information ecosystem is so fragmented, is the use of AI-generated election content adding a dangerous new layer of chaos to an already unstable situation? Apurba, I'm going to put that to you.
Well, AI is a whole new story right now, right? And you have to realize that Bangladesh as a country could not practice its democratic right to vote for the last 15 years. So we as a country now really have to go around about what is voting and what is election day. And AI is just another thing that is now on top of that whole aspect of it. So we are looking into it, and of course people are going to try to use AI. It's a new tool. People are going to get around it. So right now I think the election commission, which is going to host the election, is now have a committee that will look at AI and the use of it and how to guide Bangladesh through that aspect. So it's a whole new thing to the world and to us, and especially it's a bit critical because Bangladesh as a whole could not practice its democratic rights for the last 15 years. So now we are. It's another thing that has added to that whole conversation. But we're slowly having that conversation, and of course people are aware. And I think you have to put trust in Bangladesh's people and Bangladesh's political party, because one thing that I can tell you is nobody wants the repeatation of that last 15 years. So everybody from their own standpoint will be careful. That's what I believe.
Yeah, just we did actually. We were going to have a guest from the BNP, one of the main parties, but unfortunately something happened. There was an emergency, I believe, and he couldn't join us last minute. So we could have broadened out this conversation somewhat, because that is also the other opinion, wanting the elections to come sooner. There is actually a fascinating, very interesting and crucial debate happening, but it's also such a crucial time for the country, right? Ifti, I know you are outside of Bangladesh, but you are familiar with the pulse of the country. You have family and friends. Are people being patient? Or a lot of people want answers on the missing. This is a population that has been through incredibly hard times over the past, 15 years, let's say. Are they being patient, or do they understand that this kind of tradition after a political dynasty that's run a country for so long, that things aren't as quick as maybe one would wish?
Yeah, I can speak generally. I think patience does exist in our people, but I do believe that with every kind of news story that we hear about a misstep of the interim government, that patience wears thinner. But I don't think you see the rush for elections coming from the general public, if I'm being honest. I think there are loud voices that stand to gain a ton if elections are sooner, that are kind of pushing this narrative a bit harder. I think if you surveyed 100 random people in Dhaka, they would not have this immense sense of urgency for elections to happen as soon as possible. Frankly, the situation in Bangladesh has largely, I would say, calmed down since last July. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But it's not at a place where the normal people, people living their lives on a day-to-day basis, not interested in politics, would be feeling this major concern for elections to happen as soon as possible.
Now, Apurba, I want to put something to you. The interim government has banned, from what I understand, all activities of the Awami League. That is, of course, the party of the former Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, which means that the party cannot run in the upcoming elections. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, some would say, in fact, you have been accused of this, that this is undemocratic at a time when the message of the interim government is that it is encouraging democracy in a country that has been deprived of it for so long.
Yeah. So Awami League, the activities of Awami League is banned. The Awami League entirely is not banned, first of all. Second of all, it really depends on how you're looking at the party Awami
But are
League.
they allowed to run in the next elections? This is the question.
Well, their activities are banned till the trial. So if the trial takes place, if the trial takes longer than the election, then no. If the trial concludes before the election, then of course. So, but you really have to kind of look at how you're looking at the party Awami League and the activities that they have done for the last 15 years. I mean, whether they can run for election or not, if the ban is going to be, if the activity ban on Awami League will go away or not, that is a Supreme Court decision. But from a sociological point of view, you have to kind of look at it if Awami League, the activities of Awami League as a whole. For the last 15 years, what they have done is they have blocked freedom of speech. There have been people who disappeared on their watch, and the atrocities goes on. If you look at the UN report, there has been countless human rights violations that they have done. So it's really, I feel like if people are saying that it's undemocratic, I feel like that there's another way of looking at it. If you look at the activities of Awami League and the UN report, and then maybe they can come to a decision.
I want to play a TikTok video now where the speaker raises a point that many women in Bangladesh are concerned about, that the same women who were leading protests are now being sidelined when it comes to making decisions.
We got to talk about what happened in Bangladesh earlier this month, because around 20,000 men came together. They came together to make their frustrations known. The only reason they came together like this, they came together as a unit, is because they were protesting against women getting equality in Bangladesh. That is what they were so passionate about and so angry about. Here you can see them, how beautiful, how amazing, protectors and providers, you guys. To make it better, yes, they are part of an extremist group, and they wanted to denounce the proposed recommendations for ensuring equal rights for women, most importantly, including including ones related to property for mainly Muslim women. Of course, they disguised, their anger with, you are going against religion, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, they just wanted to make sure that women cannot inherit property the way that men can, so that they don't lose any of their precious little land to one of the most horrid creatures out there, a woman. Bangladesh has so many issues that they could have spoken out about. They will ignore all of this, like literally all of the other issues will be ignored. But as soon as it is proposed that a woman has basic human rights, basic rights in general, yeah, now that is one step too far.
Ifti, your reaction to that?
I'm in full agreement. To be honest, I read the news regarding the inheritance laws changing and the public reaction to that. And it was really disappointing because when you go back to last July, you will see just as many women as men, if not more, on the streets protesting. They are absolutely part of the movement that led to this opportunity for change. And even if they weren't, I think at a basic humanitarian level, we're at a place now in 2025 that I can't believe we have to be speaking about giving women equal rights as men. And that's honestly been one of the most disappointing things for me, watching from afar, that they are slowly being pushed out of something they helped to create.
Apurba, you're part of the interim government. What can be done about this?
Obviously this is something that people around the countries around the world face. I mean, if you've seen, there are groups like this that exist, and this is not just a Bangladesh problem. You can
True, but we're talking about Bangladesh, and you're the interim government, so I think it's a valid question what you can do about it in your country.
No, of course. I mean, they have shared their concerns, and so have the women. I mean, you're looking at that. If you look at the interim government, I mean, we're talking about Professor Muhammad Yunus, who has all his life worked for women. So obviously, there's no way the interim government will take a stand that goes against women.
Ifti, how would you describe what is facing your country today? I know you're not inside of it, so that does make things a little bit different. But how significant of a turning point is Bangladesh at? And I suppose, how important is it that the right decisions get made at this point in time by those in power?
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm 23 years old, and in my entire life, I haven't seen this level of mobility and this level of opportunity in my country. So that's why this moment feels more important than anything in the last 23 years, because for the first time, I feel like change is possible. And I think the interim government has been a big part of that. They've also been very refreshing to see. So for me, that's why this next election is so crucial, because, to Apurba's point, this is really the true first election in 15 years. And that, I guess, is what underscores my emphasis in allowing this to take time so that it can be done properly. Because my worst fear is, a fair and free election does not occur, and whatever party takes charge next. I appreciate Apurba's point that no one wants the reputation that Awami League has developed in the last 15 years. But if you look past the last 15 years, the Awami League wasn't the first, corrupt government that had abuses of power. I am not so optimistic that if, the wrong people came to charge, that they would not abuse that same power. So I am very hopeful, but again, as I keep saying, very, very cautious.
Apurba, I'm going to put the last thought to you. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. I know you work closely with Mr. Yunus. I know you're not him, but I'm going to ask you, if he were here and if I asked him, what would be the most difficult thing the last year has brought, and also the thing that the interim government and Mr. Yunus would see as their biggest achievement?
Well, for the last 1 year, I got used to being on the spot, so it's completely fine. Again, I'm not Professor Yunus, but I do have worked closely with him. I don't think he's. He has said this in an interview that there's no way he's satisfied, because there's so much scope to do for this country, and because of the system, maybe things are slow. So he's obviously. I can guarantee you this that he's not really satisfied with his work. He always thinks it can be done better. I don't know what he would think about his greatest achievement is for the last 1 year, but if you allow me, I can tell you mine is one of the things is for the last after 15 years, or maybe after the independence of this country, people of Bangladesh have now get to really practice freedom of speech. I think that's one of the best things that this interim government has achieved. There's no censor, there's nothing, and you can say whatever you want. And I think that's the great practice. I mean, one of the things I can tell you is BTV, Bangladesh Television, a state-run television, in that television's talk show, people can come now and criticize the government left, right, and center. That could not have been possible even after independence. So this is something we're seeing really new right now. And it's really something amazing to see in person.
Well, that's all we have time for. Apurba and Ifti, thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for being part of the conversation. And I'll see you soon.